It was getting the air up and over the helmet a little bit better than with the standard windscreen. Hey, good morning, everybody. This is Dell with Moto Adventure Outdoor. Today, we're going to be covering a topic that is near and dear to my heart. It's wind buffeting with helmets. And I have a couple bikes. I've had a couple bikes where this has really been an issue. And we're going to go over some things on how to figure out what's causing it and how to fix it. I actually am going to try something new. I've got this fancy fog machine, and we're going to use it to simulate some aerodynamic testing once the windscreens are on the bike. I actually have 4 different windscreens. We'll cover those in just a minute. I do want to first start though with what buffeting is, just a quick review, and that'll help us dive into how to fix it. Wind buffeting is when your helmet, essentially, when you're riding, gets into a pocket of air where essentially the air is just not happy. It's turbulent. So your helmet is shaking all over the place, and it makes it hard sometimes to even see. It can be noisy. It can make your neck sore. It can be very annoying. So there's a lot of variables that go into this. There's not usually, sometimes there's one quick and easy fix, but the same fix doesn't apply to every situation or every person, and we'll cover that in this video. One of the first things I want to talk about, though, is the helmet itself. Obviously, I have an adventure helmet here, and it's got a visor. So some things that can affect buffeting, aside from, the airflow around the helmet and all that, is the helmet itself with things like the visor. The visor can be a real wind sail. It can catch the air. It can cause it to flutter. I know this helmet, when it catches air around here, it really, vibrates this piece up here, and it drives me nuts. The other thing is just the overall shape of the helmet. It's a aerodynamic shape. It's going to work better. Doing things like, mounting a camera either on the front of the helmet or on top of the helmet can really cause some issues as well. So just keep that in mind. The other thing is the fitment of the helmet. If the helmet's not fitting well, it has the ability to move a little bit easier. So even something as simple as fitment can make the problem worse with buffeting. So a lot of people know they have buffeting. They think they need a different windscreen, and they're like, well, what height windscreen should I start off with? Well, I guess that depends on what your goal is. If you want the air to go up and over your helmet, a good rule of thumb is to have the top of the windscreen, maybe about level with your nose. So, right now this is positioned a little bit higher than it should be, but essentially that would, hopefully get your, a lot of that airflow up over the top of your helmet and kind of create a better pocket for your helmet to be in. Now, the flip side of that is, a lot of people are like, well, hey, I'm just going to go with a short windscreen. I want my helmet in clean air. I just want it to basically the air to hit maybe my upper torso. I don't care about that. I just want it to basically my helmet to be in clean air, and that can be a fix too. So a couple other things to consider besides the visor itself, the helmet, the relationship between those two is there's actually air going around, the bike as well, around the motorcycle. Some of that air is going around the forks, and sometimes that air can actually kind of come up, around the bike and hit, the bottom of your helmet. And that can also contribute to buffeting. So if you're out on a ride, you're trying to figure out what's going on. Hey, where's the air hitting my helmet? One of the things we're going to do on these test rides is we're going to use a free hand to kind of place it, under the helmet, up above. We're going to try and figure out where that airflow is hitting. And sometimes when you're riding, doing a test ride, trying to figure out buffeting, you can simply, if you hold your hand in a certain position and you feel the buffeting get better, then that's going to point you in the right direction of what you need to fix. All right, guys, so I've laid out the 4 windscreens that we're going to be testing today. This windscreen is actually the stock OEM windscreen for the Aprilia Touareg, in my case, the Touareg Rally. And that's the first windscreen we're going to test. After that, we're going to put this windscreen extender, which is, I don't know, I'd say that's 4 inches tall. We're going to try that out. We're going to mount that on top of the screen. We're going to go for a ride. We're going to do some various tests. We are then going to test what is called the Enduro windscreen. This guy is very short, kind of petite, doesn't offer a lot of wind coverage, but this is the type of windscreen you might pick if you're just like, hey, you know, I don't care if there's a little bit of wind pressure on my body. I just want my helmet and clean air. This is what this windscreen should do. We're going to test it out. This right here is a Touring windscreen, but in this case, it's called a Touring Plus because not only is it tall, but it's wide as well. So this is, you know, something that you might pick if you're putting a lot of miles on the highway, or, you know, you just really don't like that wind pressure on your body or on your helmet. This is designed to kind of get a lot of air both up and over the top of you and around you. So we're going to give that a try as well. All right, so we're getting set up for test number 1 here. A couple quick things I want to mention is number 1, the seat height. The seat height can actually affect how tall you are on the bike. So that affects basically where your helmet is in relationship to the airflow. So that's definitely something that can affect buffeting. Also, something that's kind of a small thing, but if you have aftermarket mirrors, those can also affect it. Or if you have other things like an action camera, you know, all that can interrupt the airflow. So like with these aftermarket mirrors here, these are the double takes. You can actually lower them a little bit, get them out to the side, see if that makes a difference. All right, so for test number 1, we've got the factory windscreen. This windscreen measures 17 inches tall, and we're gonna get on and go for a ride here. All right, I'm going to close the visor here. All right, so straight away, we're just going to get up to 55 here. And even at 55 miles an hour, I can feel what I'm going to call the beginning stages of buffeting with this helmet. And where it gets really bad is, I'd say right around 70. So we'll increase our speed up to 70. And I can literally hear it. I can feel like a severe vibration on the top of the helmet. Now, like I mentioned before, one thing you can do is kind of, you know, put your hand up in front of you where you think the wind is coming from to try to determine what's causing the buffeting. Now, I do want to say on this motorcycle, I'm pretty fortunate in that there's not a lot of air that comes up through the tunnel where the forks are. This has a very wide fuel tank and does a great job of blocking the wind down below here. Like literally when I hold my hand right here, it's like it's in a nice pocket of air. Where I'm feeling the air is like right up here. So that's what we're going to keep in mind with this testing. Now, I do want to also point out, if I was a shorter person, like literally if I hunker down like this, it gets much better. If I stand up like this just a hair, like to where I'm maybe 2 inches taller, I'm in cleaner air. So those are definitely some other factors there. One thing that may be very possible is that this windscreen could work perfect for another person. I've actually seen plenty of videos on the Aprilia Touaregs where people love the windscreen. They say it's got great wind protection. But my guess is that those people are either a little bit shorter than me or a little bit taller than me. Yeah, so again, you know, I approach approach 70 miles an hour, and it's just literally catching the wind visor up there and fluttering it. As soon as I hold my hand up, it stops. Now, if you're just hanging out around, 55 miles an hour, it's really not that bad. But I don't know about where you live, but most of the, even the 2-lane highways, most people aren't just hanging out at 55 miles an hour. Yeah. All right, guys, got the initial ride done for test 1 on the OEM windscreen. And now I've got this little smoke machine set up so that hopefully it's going to blow that smoke kind of upward and we can see where it goes. All right, so I'm probably just going to get up to around 55 miles an hour with the smoke machine set up here to see what that looks like. Well, I can definitely see the smoke, but what I don't know is if it's visible in the camera. So again, when I hold my hand up, right around here is where I'm feeling a lot of air, just kind of catching the top of the helmet. Looks like I can't really see where it's going, but I see smoke in front of me anyway. All right, guys, so we're moving on to test number 2 with the windshield extension. Now, the way that I've got this installed, it's actually measuring about 22 inches from the bottom to the top. The OEM screen is like 17 inches. All right, we'll get on the road. So one of the things I want to point out here is the height of the visor. While it does seem quite a bit taller, I can definitely still easily see over it. And where my camera is on my helmet, it's on the chin, so that might be more looking through it a little bit, but rest assured I can still see easily over the top. So no visibility issues, anything like that. One thing that's probably worth mentioning also is I've actually rode with all of these solutions for several days, not just today. I am kind of switching them all out today for the video, but I do have a pretty good idea how all of these work. And one thing about these little extenders is if you're looking for a quick and easy way to really knock that wind down, if you know it's hitting the top of your helmet and causing an issue, it's a good solution. We're doing about 60 right now, and while there's wind noise just like normal, I mean, it's a motorcycle, it definitely has taken the edge off of that buffeting a little bit. So that is definitely a tick mark for the extension. One thing I'm not doing today is doing a bunch of adjustments on this windscreen, this extender, but there is a lot of adjustability, and I've heard of people, when they're doing rides where, let's say they have both some highway and then some slower speed stuff, they are adjusting it on the slower speed stuff so it actually directs air, at their body or wherever they want it to go. So that adjustability is certainly nice, and it's also nice because it works with a bunch of different bikes. You know, these things have so much adjustment. So just holding my hand up, you know, the air definitely feels like it's coming in higher. Around the sides, I'd say, you know, it's about the same, but, you know, literally like right in front of my face, there's no wind. It's like essentially it feels like my glove or my hand is in an eddy of air. If that makes sense. It's just, there's no pressure. I mean, I can just barely feel it. And these are pretty thin gloves. You get up here though, you can definitely feel it. So I do believe in this situation that we're getting that air up over the top of the helmet with this extender. Alright guys, I pulled over to get the smoke machine hooked up in a similar fashion on test number 2 with the windshield extension. We'll get on the road, get this thing turned on, see if we can see anything. Alright, got the visor down. Probably just going to get up to around 55 again. And we'll see what we see. Now again, you know, when I was doing the testing with this with my hand, it definitely felt like it was getting the air up and over the helmet a little bit better than with the standard windscreen. We'll see what it looks like on the video. Alright, so we're going about 55 right now. Again, not really any wind buffeting. I think the extension is a huge improvement. Coming into a corner here. Alright guys, so just a quick recap on this windshield extension. For me, in my situation, it worked great as far as solving the buffeting. I got this one off of Amazon for, I think, less than $30. I am a little concerned that this particular one would last. You know, I'm concerned about the durability. I'm concerned about the type of plastic. You know, is it softer? Does it scratch easier? One of the other things that I don't like about these overall on motorcycles is the way they make a bike look. I think they just, no matter what bike they're on, they look like they're added on. So for me, you know, I don't know if I'd ever use one full time, but I guess, you know, if I got a new bike and needed a stopgap until I could get a different windscreen, I definitely would try it out. Alright guys, so we're on to test number 3. This is going to be the Enduro windscreen. And while this is definitely a lot narrower, it's only 2 inches shorter than the OEM screen. So it measures 15 inches high. Alright, we'll get on and go for a ride. So one thing you immediately notice with the Enduro windscreen is you have more wind on your face. But, you know, this windscreen's only 2 inches lower than the factory windscreen. And so really, I don't think it's going to get my whole helmet in the airflow. Alright, so as we approach 55 miles an hour, you know, I can still feel maybe just a little bit of fluttering on the visor. And let me put my hand up and see kind of where the airflow is. You know, kind of as expected, it's not, you know, like the OEM screen was up here. This one, the airflow is kind of on the upper half of my helmet, I'd say. The buffeting is reduced, but there's definitely you know, there's definitely still a lot of pressure on the helmet and a lot of airflow there. Now, it's a little bit different than, I'd say, riding a naked bike. I do feel like with this windscreen, you're a little more connected to the road, just that wind in your face feeling. But really, I think if that's what you're after and there's an option with your bike to not have a windscreen, then I'd probably just not have a windscreen. So as we approach 70 here, it doesn't feel too bad. There's definitely a lot more wind noise than the factory screen, but there's not as much buffeting, if that makes sense. Now, as far as the air around the side of the windscreen, I can feel just a little bit more air, I'd say, you know, on my shoulders in this area. So that's something to consider. I feel like for this bike, the Enduro windscreen that I got needs to be just a little bit shorter to get my whole helmet in the, you know, some clean air, so to speak. Okay guys, so I pulled over, I got this little smoke machine hooked back up, and actually, you know, when I was at the house swapping over the windscreens, I did review some of the 360 footage. I don't know how useful it's going to be, but I did notice the camera angle, you know, it was a little kind of far back on the bike, so I moved the camera forward. We'll see what it looks like. All right, so going about 30 miles an hour now, 35. And as you can probably already notice, I mean, that smoke is just kind of coming straight from my face. I'll get up to 55 here. Oh, maybe after this corner. So there's 55, 60. Yeah, that clean air just is, you know, mostly going to be hitting, I'd say, from about here up on my helmet. But even as such, you know, apparently the mixture between that higher pressure air and the lower pressure air is good enough that I don't have a bunch of buffeting, so that's good. Yeah, from my perception, it actually looks like some of the wind is going down, you know, towards my chest too. All right, guys, so just got back from the ride with the Enduro windscreen. And in this particular case, as mentioned, the windscreen is only about 2 inches lower than the factory screen. And for me, it did eliminate the buffeting. I guess there is a little bit more pressure on your helmet, on your shoulders in this with this windscreen. But overall, if you're just looking to get rid of some buffeting, that might be an option for you. One other consideration is the styling. You know, some people are going to like the look of this a little bit better. a little more minimalistic and makes the bike look a little more sporty. All right, guys, so good afternoon, and we're on to the fourth and final test. This is the Touring Plus windscreen, which is a taller windscreen than stock. This actually measures 19 inches from the bottom to the top, and that's only 2 inches taller than the OEM windscreen. So it's probably worth mentioning, if I haven't already, I'm doing most of these tests with the wind visor down on the helmet, and I'm using the microphone that is, it's basically a microphone that's wired directly to the DJI Action 4. So the audio should be pretty consistent as far as, devices and whatnot. I'm going to make sure that all the audio is processed the same. So this is the tall Touring Plus windscreen, and it's not really that tall. I mean, I can easily see right over the top of it, and it does knock down a lot of the buffeting, but honestly, as far as performance goes with the buffeting, the add-on the windshield extension does a better job with the buffeting. But one thing I do like about this windscreen is it's pretty wide, so it gets a lot of pressure off of your upper body and kind of directs a lot of air around you. So that's good. I probably put, I'd say, in the neighborhood of 800 miles on this windscreen. I mean, not today, but because I've been switching them around, but this is the one that's been on my bike for a while, and overall I feel like it does a pretty good job. But I don't know, I think if I was going to do a super long road trip, I might throw on the factory windscreen with that extension on top, just because it does do such a great job with creating a nice pocket for your helmet to ride in. I feel like as far as touring windscreens go, this is a pretty short windscreen. I don't know, it's probably... Another thing I like about this windscreen is actually the way it looks. It actually looks like it belongs on the bike. It doesn't look like it's an afterthought. It looks like this is the windscreen the bike should have been sold with. All right, guys, so I got the little vapor smoke machine set up on the Touring Plus windscreen. We'll get it going here in a minute and see if we can see anything. All right, so we got up to about 55 miles an hour. And, just putting my hand up, I feel like the air is still kind of hitting the top of my, the top of my helmet a little bit. But maybe it's just slightly higher than the, the factory screen, so the buffeting isn't quite as bad. And with this Touring Plus windscreen that's wider, definitely there's less air on my shoulders, less air pressure, which is pretty nice. Well, I feel like the majority of the smoke is being sent kind of up and over my helmet. I don't see a lot of anything kind of in front of my face other than the nozzle up there. But it just seems to be going up and over the top. We'll get up to a 70 here real quick. There's 70 miles an hour. Guys, thanks for hanging in there if you've made it this far. This has been kind of a lot of work, changing all these windscreens out. I've done my best to do a honest comparison on them. And, you know, I am trying to grow the channel. I would appreciate you guys if you like this sort of content and my other adventure type videos. Please subscribe. And with that, let's get into kind of the results of this video and what I think. Number one, the OEM windscreen for my height does not work very well, but it might work pretty well for other people. It did, however, work extremely well at solving the buffeting with the extension on top. So if you're looking for a cheap solution and you don't mind the way they look, that might be the way to go. The Enduro windscreen, the short one, actually was, pretty nice to ride with. You got a little bit more wind on your face, a little more minimalistic, wasn't completely ugly. So to me, that's definitely a viable option. I have used that windscreen before too. And then lastly, the one I've got on here, the Touring Plus, this one's a little bit wider, which is what the plus means. This is good overall protection and does reduce the buffeting, but for my height, it doesn't completely get the air over the top of the helmet, so at higher speeds I do kind of feel some minimal buffeting still. Anyway guys, thanks for hanging in there again, and we'll see you next time.